So today's topic is respiration. It is essential for life, providing energy needed for various life processes. It involves exchange of O2 and CO2 between the environment and cell, where organic nutrition like glucose are broken down enzymatically to release energy. Oxygen is utilized by organism to break down biomolecule and derive energy, while CO2, a harmful gas, is released. Therefore, cell need to continuous supply of oxygen and immediately remove the CO2. It is necessitating of a respiratory system. Let's know the function of respiratory system to exchange O2 and CO2 between the atmosphere and the blood, to maintain the homeostasis regulation of the body pH, to protect us from inhaled pathogen and pollutant, to maintain the vocal cord for normal communication, to remove the heat produced during the cellular respiration. Different animals have varied respiratory organ adapted to their habitat and level of organization, such as simple diffusion through body surface, moist skin, tracheal tubes, gills, and lungs. The human respiratory system includes external nostrils, nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and lungs containing alveoli. The part from the nostril to the terminal bronchioles form the conducting zone, which humidifies and warms the incoming air. The alveoli and duct form the respiratory zone, meant for gaseous exchange. Air entering the nostrils is filtered by a fine hair and mucus. Mucous membrane lining the airway traps microorganisms and dust particles, which are carried upward. The epiglottis prevent food from entering the larynx, the windpipe, during the swallowing. The trachea is a semi-flexible tube supported by cartilaginous rings, which divides into primary bronchi and secondary and tertiary bronchi, leading to the terminal and respiratory bronchioles within the lungs. The lungs are light, spongy tissue enclosing in the thoracic cavity, bounded by the vertebral column, sternum, ribs, and diaphragm. They are covered by a double-walled pleural membrane containing pleural fluid, which reduces the friction during breathing. The primary site for exchange of gases is alveoli, and the diffusion membrane of the alveolus consists of thin squamous epithelium cell of alveoli, the type 1 and type 2 cells. The endothelium of the alveolar capillaries and the basement substance between them. Type 1 cells are thin, form rapid gas diffusion, while type 2 cells synthesize and secrete surfactants which lowers the surface tension in the alveoli, preventing lungs collapse and pulmonary edema. Surfactant synthesis began at the 25th week of gestation, and low level in premature babies can cause a newborn respiratory distress syndrome (NRDS). Breathing or ventilation is the movement of air between the atmosphere and the lung. It consists of two phases, inspiration and expiration. Now, inspiring the air, it is we are taking the air into the lungs, and expiration is air, we are taking out the air by the lungs. So, these phases occur during the pressure change in thoracic cavity, causing by the contraction and relaxation of the diaphragm and intercostal muscles. So, the respiratory volume and capacities describe the amount of air involved in different phases of breathing. So, tidal volume, the air inspired and expired in normal breath, that is approximately 500 ml. Then, inspiratory reserve volume (IRV), additional air inspired by forceful inspiration, that is approximately 2500 to 3000 ml. Then, expiratory reserve volume, additional air forcefully exhaled after normal expiration, that is approximately 1000 to 1100 ml. Residual volume, air remain after forceful expiration, that is approximately 1100 to 1200 ml. Vital capacity, maximum air move out from after the maximal inspiration, ERV plus TV plus IRV. Now, ERV is what? Expiratory reserve volume, plus the TV, that is the tidal volume, and IRV, it is inspiratory reserve volume. So all adding we get the vital capacity. Then inspiratory capacity is the total air inhaled after normal expiration. That is also tidal volume plus IRV. Then expiratory capacity EC, it is the total air exhaled after normal inspiration, TB plus ERV. Total lung capacity is total air lung can hold after the force of inspiration, VC plus RV. Now your VC is the vital capacity and RV is residual volume. Now there is a dead space. The air is in the respiratory passage where gas exchange doesn't occur. It is approximately 150 ml. Minute respiratory volume. Air moving into respiratory passes per minute. Normal 6 liters per minute. Gaseous exchange. Uptake of O2 and release of CO2 occur between the blood and the tissue by simple diffusion, driven by a partial pressure gradient of O2 and CO2. Partial pressure is the pressure contributed by an individual gas in a mixture. O2 move from alveoli, higher O2 to the blood and then tissues to lower PO2, partial oxygen, and the CO2 move from the tissue at higher partial carbon dioxide to the blood and then to alveoli that consist of the lower partial CO2 for the elimination. So CO2 is 20 to 25 times more soluble than O2, that is oxygen. So oxygen is transported into the blood, mainly bounded to the hemoglobin within RBCs, that is 97%, and a small amount is dissolved in the plasma, that is 3%. Hemoglobin binds reversibly with O2 to form oxyhemoglobin. Each hemoglobin molecule can carry up for 4 oxygen molecules. Factors like high partial oxygen, low partial carbon dioxide, low temperature and less hydrogen concentration favors oxyhemoglobin formation in the alveoli. Low partial oxygen and high CO2, partial CO2, higher hydrogen and higher temperature favor oxygen dissociation, forming the hemoglobin in the tissue. The relationship between hemoglobin saturation and PO2 is shown by a sigma H-shaped oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Carbon dioxide is transported in the blood into 3 main ways: dissolved, bounded to hemoglobin, that is a carbamide hemoglobin, and a bicarbonate H2CO3. Then CO2 is produced in the RBCs from CO2 and water and catalyzed by the carbonic anhydrase. In the lungs, the process is reversed and CO2 diffuses from the blood into the alveoli. Respiration is regulated by specialized respiratory centers in the medulla oblongata, respiratory rhythm center, and the pneumatic center in the pons. So, respiratory disorder mentioned include pulmonary embolism, blood clot in the lung, bronchitis, inflammation of bronchial tubes, asthma, a narrow swallow airways with excess and mucus, lung cancer, smoking is a major risk factor, pneumonia, inflammation in alveoli, and pulmonary edema. The fluid builds up in the lung. Atelectasis, a lung collapse, tuberculosis, infectious disease, emphysema, and lung cancer are common among smokers and cannot be cured. Pause the video and note down the important points of this respiratory system.